Welcome back to Two Who's Review. I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and today we're looking at the Monster of Peladon,
Hmm.
the second last Third Doctor story that ever aired,
Yeah.
and I'm to understand a rare instance of a sequel story in classic Who.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are others, but yeah, it's like a sequel in the sense that, same setting, um, similar elements, not just like a recurring villain, um, or even like, another Dalek story. This is kind of, yeah, they're not that common.
No, certainly none that are this closely linked.
Yeah, especially given, because when you think about it, right, 50-year time difference for Doctor Who, that's not very long.
No, no.
Which is, I just find that funny.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Um. In any case, we both found the last trip to Peladon pretty great. We both ranked
Hmm.
it fairly high.
Hmm.
Um, so the main question is, does this return trip suffer from sequelitis, or was it a heroic return?
Hmm.
What do you think?
I love this story, and I think it's an improvement on basically most of, if not maybe everything in the first story. Maybe there's stuff that I'm not acknowledging. There could be flaws I'm not aware of, but I certainly found it more compelling than the first one.
I in the first half, I was a kind of annoyed at it because I felt that it was sort of treading similar ground
Hmm.
to the previous one. Like it felt very similar in various ways. But then the second half rolled around and it became this completely different thing. This
Yeah,
like
there's a like a fair contrast. Like the big divider is when the Ice Warriors show up, because that
it
happens at the
is,
beginning
yeah,
of episode 3.
yeah.
Yeah, I can
Um,
understand that. I think for me, there's enough in that first half because I really love the turmoil of the miners.
the miners is the new stuff in the first half that
Yeah, and
I appreciated that. Yeah,
the very sort of proletarian ethos that gets explored in that first half. I find very compelling. Um, Nice seeing the Doctor standing up for um for them.
yeah.
Um,
Stand up for the little guy. Yeah.
yeah, this
Um.
it's funny with the story. Because there are a couple of elements, including the whole bit with the miners, um, where it seems pretty woke to me, Cuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm just acting crazy
um.
here. But
Yeah. I was wondering. I was wondering how long it was going to take for us to get to this.
mm,
Um. This point. But I don't think you got a leg to stand on here. I mean, all this episode has to say for it is, you know, fair working conditions,
yeah,
gender equality.
and fuck you, feudalism and aristocracy, and also
That's all.
and
That's
also
all it
fuck
says.
you, fuck you, sort of blood and thunder, violent nationalism
Mm, mm,
with.
mm. Yeah, nothing woke about any of that.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like, and obviously it's not deliberate, but it's not as if you could draw parallels to Azaxia and his, make Mars great again attitudes and certain
Mm,
current political leaders.
no, certainly not. 50 years ago. 50 years
Yeah,
ago. That
crazy.
being said, I just realized by the time this episode airs, the election will be over.
Oh, yeah, fuck.
So we're recording this with zero knowledge of who is going to be the president. Um, it's,
Mm,
yeah, it's not. This episode has certainly not become incredibly relevant in the last decade or so.
yeah. And
And
it was, well, and the funny thing is, it was a response to current political turmoil because it was
oh
a
no, almost certainly, yeah. None of this happens predicting the future.
Yeah, no. It was like a lot of great sci-fi. It doesn't predict it, so it only reflects, right? It
Yeah.
was a reflection of the miners' strike and the 3-day week that was going on in Britain at the time, and it does
Mm.
so really well. And really good to see the show come down on the side of the miners and fair working conditions.
Yeah.
Because frankly, there are certainly worse,
Mm.
forms of ethos that we've seen in Doctor Who stories.
Kablam!
Not, yeah.
Sorry, excuse me. I had something in my throat there. It was a
I was gonna
horrible
say,
episode.
yeah. Can you just explain to me quickly, Cuff, why is a story that's 50 years old? Why does it seem to have better things to say on many leftist issues, feminism included, than basically anything in the Chivalry era? Can you
I
explain that
don't
to me,
know,
please?
but I would like someone to explain why in just 11 regeneration the character would go from defending workers' rights to defending companies' rights.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, moving fast. But
moving right along.
aside from the minor stuff in the first half of the episode, we get a chancellor who wants to restore the order, a
Hmm.
federation who wants to appease the planet, but there's some within the federation who are aligned against.
Yeah.
And we have the Doctor having to prove his allegiance to both sides, and at one point having to fight in a pit.
Yeah, being a sort of a political peacemaker, which is,
Yeah,
I mean, I
a lot of
enjoy that
that stuff.
personally. I love it when the Doctor's like that,
I
but
enjoy it, but a lot of that stuff is really the definition of retrodden ground from the Curse of
yeah,
Peladon.
I think I'll challenge that slightly and put it like this. I don't disagree. There are a lot of similar elements, but a lot of it is kind of saved in the second half because not only
Oh
do you
no,
get,
yeah,
yeah, because not only do you get the whole, um, you know, uh, rebellious, horrible faction of the Ice Warriors bit, but you also get the Peladonian people being united together rather than the old guard trying to destroy you know uh the Peladonian people. So
and
I
that is what
think
ultimately saves the first half for
yes,
me,
a lot of
because
it.
you do need that civil unrest so that when they do all turn together, it's more
Yep.
powerful in that way.
And you need the class conflict, which is from the beginning, really, to
Yes,
really sort of anchor that bridge between the nobility and the workers. It's like I said, it's very proletarian, and I very much appreciate that. Um,
yeah.
uh, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, would you say it's a similar situation to um, Dot and Bubble, where a lot of it is saved by sort of the ending, or do you think it's a little bit different?
I think it's a bit different because Dot and
Mm,
Bubble is already a unique story before its big twist reveal at the end. Because Dot and Bubble is already a story where the Doctor and Ruby are forced to help from a distance, which is rare for
that's
those
true.
characters, for the Doctor and Companion. And then
Mm,
it is recontextualized by its ending.
yeah.
Um, in this instance, it's a lot of similar themes and discussion points and plot points in the first half, only for
Mm.
the second half to not even recontextualize those things, but um,
Bring them sort of more together, I guess.
yeah, but also in a way of being like, it's a way of introducing new themes on top of what
Mm,
has already been discussed in a previous story, and
mm.
it's not something that you can do in a story like this if you don't spend a decent amount of time re-exploring
Yeah,
that other stuff
yeah. You
from
need the
before.
context. Like you wouldn't. I mean, it would be. Actually,
I
that's a
wonder if
question. Would it be a detriment if you walked into this story without seeing the first Paladin story? And if so,
I
how
think,
much?
well, I think it would
Mm,
because um, there is a certain level of understanding that we have for the world of Peladon that
mm,
going
mm.
in contextualizes certain things.
Yeah,
Agador in particular, because since we
true.
know the nature of the monster,
Yeah.
its
And the sort of
reoccurrence.
and the sort of the superstitions surrounding
Yeah,
him, and
certainly,
also
yeah.
the very like they make it clear, they openly say that it's a feudalistic society, and Queen Thalira talks about the misogyny that she has to face, but it's still useful having the background so that all of that is still sort of even more believable, I guess.
That's true, yeah.
Um,
I also think that it's and I did just spend a while mentioning that the first half is very similar. And I wonder if a part of that is also maybe a commentary on the cyclical nature um of political cycles and stuff like
yeah,
that.
and sort of
And
history, like it.
like the dangers of
Mm,
not backsliding into
mm.
previous regimes in a weird way.
Well, the funny thing is, in the Curse of Peladon, I think it's Tepesh, the guy who wants to bring it all back to, you know,
Yeah.
to not join the Federation. He says, oh, they'll they'll take away our resources and enslave us to their technology. In a way, that is what's happened. But the good
Yeah.
part for me is it's not like a literal reversal on the points of the first story, because it shows
No.
that that exploitation is due to things like capitalism and the military industrial complex and
Yeah.
the feudalistic traditions of Peladon, which were the problems in the first place. So I think given how easy it would have been just to sort of go back on and then kind of say, fuck you to the themes of the original story, they kind of take those themes and expand them in new and interesting ways, which I certainly admire, I think, which is quite good.
Hmm.
Um,
I agree with that.
yeah,
But I think that like I said, I think a lot of that stuff becomes way more evident by the time you hit like episode 4 when the status
yeah,
changes and the Ice Warriors enter the picture. And I think
yeah,
there is a danger in the first half of the story of sort of clocking out and going, I've already seen this, I don't need to watch it again. Let me know when the spiders
mm,
get here in the next story. I'll
yeah.
tune in then. That's John Pertwee's actual final story. That's the one I want to see. Not not
Mm.
Peladon 2, here we go again. Um
Um, yeah, I guess so. I would say there are smaller elements that make that first half a bit more, if not, more compelling than different, I guess, to
yeah.
Curse of Peladon, mainly the interesting feminist stuff with Sarah
Yeah,
and the Queen, but also Sarah herself, because she's actually a really good companion in this story. She's very
she
active in the
does bring
plot.
a yeah, she does bring a different energy than Joe did.
Yeah, and she's quite decisive, and she's very perceptive, and having that is just really interesting for me. That being said, you are right in saying that in a lot of ways it's just retreading old ground, and even with Dot and Bubble, most of the uh retreaded ground in that story is mainly sort of surface level story stuff. It's like, oh, utopia, oh boy, I hope there's not a dystopia at the bottom of this, and oh, we got scary slug monsters eating people, oh, that's super scary, and then they turn it all around in the end. Here though, as you say, the thematic concerns are, as well as the setting, are very similar, and those things combined makes it again, like, certainly not worthless. I think there is enough for audiences to want to invest their time. Certainly there was for me, but as you say, there's also enough similarities that the back half of this story really has to do a lot of the heavy lifting, um,
And it does.
sort of make it come together, and it does for sure.
Yeah. Um, my main concern in the second
Mm.
half was for a while was please don't backslide on the Ice Warriors gang. Don't do it again.
But
But
they
they don't.
don't, which is
They
just
don't. They establish that these batch of Ice Warriors are a splinter group and are going
yeah,
against the rest of the Ice Warriors. I
yeah,
think not even the Curse of Peladon gave the Ice Warriors like individual autonomy because
yeah.
that
This is
episode said the entire Ice Warrior nation species have disavowed violence,
yeah.
and now we've got some who haven't, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say, it kind of
they're
answers
not
that question.
they're not a
That-
collective. There are
Yeah,
insurgents. This is
yeah.
great.
And it also just helps with the broader themes by showing the terrible impact of, again, the military-industrial complex, that they're in the
Yeah.
middle of a pretty desperate war.
Mhm.
And it does get pretty full on.
Well, also
Mm,
the fact that some people are so eager or quick at least to turn on their own side in exchange for a
yeah,
better deal.
for power, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, or like with Eckersley and with the commander.
Yeah, yeah.
Eckersley in particular, in my mind, is a slight weak point in the back half of the story because I just don't buy like his explanations of why he turned. Like he says a couple of different things where he at first he says I'll become the most powerful person in the galaxy, and then he says they're gonna make me ruler of Earth, which I don't know how
Mm,
the second thing gets you the first thing.
yeah.
And also, I don't. Is he the Earth delegate? Because if he isn't, then why does he want Earth so badly? It just seems like a rushed explanation for
Yeah,
me as to why
yeah,
he is going along with all of this.
yeah. Yeah,
Which, which is
that
a shame
seems
because
fair.
he's otherwise a sufficiently slimy and kind of gross character.
Yeah, and
Like
I think for me, the twist of him being the villain, I thought was pretty convincing because he doesn't, both in terms of the writing but also the performance, he
mm,
doesn't seem like he's super scheming, or at least no more than anyone else is on this planet. But then it's revealed, oh no, he's orchestrating this whole thing,
yeah,
and it is quite shocking.
I'll level with you. I saw the reveal coming like 2 or 3 episodes in advance.
Touche.
And part of that was also because I was picking up like I was treating it sort of as like a sequelitis thing, being like last time there was
Mm,
a traitor on the council. Who's
mm,
it going to be this time? I think it's
mm,
Eckersley. And then
mm.
oh look at that, it was him.
Yeah, I guess so, because he's kind of like he's not, he's not Alpha Centauri, he's not the Ice Warriors, so it's almost like a default, like, okay, it's probably this dude, and he's also kind of dismissive of the Peladonian people. He's not like overtly evil in that first half, but
No,
you just get a vibe with him, I guess.
yeah, he has.
Um,
There are moments where he's like I think it for me it was like his insistence on there being nothing in that chamber with all the
mm,
technology in it,
yeah,
and it starts out
and
being
trying to
like,
sort
oh,
of
don't be. It
gaslight
starts out,
Sarah into
yeah, and it starts out being like a don't be ridiculous, like I'm being a pompous ass thing where it's like I know my own. I'm my technology is
yeah,
superior. There's
yeah,
no way anyone could sneak inside. But then the more it goes on, the more it's like, oh no, he's hiding something. Especially
yeah,
when the Ice Warriors pop out of it, it's like
yeah,
he knew.
because
He must
yeah,
have
because
known.
they do hone the point uh pretty intensely. That
Yeah,
yeah, that's fair. Um, I think for me, like you mentioned, the sort of the rushed element of his characterization. That's fair, I think. But one of the issues I had with Curse of Helden was a lot of elements, particularly at the end, they felt very rushed to me. Like the
they
fact that
did. Like,
they have
yeah,
this, you know, resource that everybody wants to get that's not really established very well. But here it's worked into the plot from the beginning.
it is. Yeah.
And even the war going on is foreshadowed pretty well. And even the fact that the war ends so abruptly, maybe you felt differently, but I was surprised how satisfying that was,
Oh no,
'cause
I
it
loved that.
yeah, 'cause it kinda made sense. It's like, oh, if this one great plan, it looks like they were kind of hinging Galaxy 5 was kind of hinging itself on this one plan with the Ice Warriors, and it failed, so, time
Well,
to give it up.
they also firmly established that whoever controls Peladon's
Yeah,
supply of trisilicate,
yeah,
they're going to be way more technologically able than the other side. And so as soon as Galaxy 5 loses their access to it, they're like, "Oh,
yeah,
okay, they're gonna wipe us out. Let's quickly
yeah,
negotiate surrender,"
yeah,
which
yep,
is perfect. It's just so
yeah.
like it's a
It's,
great display of like the futility of it all.
yeah, it's quite compelling in that sense. And given how quickly that's resolved, it's done very well because that could have been handled way worse, I think.
Oh yeah.
Um, So yeah, I think those elements are what really sort of elevated the story for me. I see what you mean about it being sort of back heavy in that sense.
Mm.
But all the elements, like, because there are a lot of elements in the story, and it is 6 parts, which I'd forgotten about, by the way. But
Yeah.
given that, I think most of the ideas are worked through um, pretty well, and to the point where even though a lot of them are getting resolved in that back half, it justifies kind of that first half enough for me. Anyway, there are, I think other stuff to talk about, like
Oh
the
yeah.
characters, of course.
Yep.
Doctor's good fun as always.
Yep. He's always great in this setting. Yeah.
He's very, he's consistently proven himself a very, I guess, I don't know,
He's an
ethically
able
sound
negotiator.
doctor.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, like, because we've seen it here, we've seen it with um the invasion of the dinosaurs. He's got a really, I don't know, I just really like his particular brand of politics as kind of a
Yeah, I do as well.
rebellious, um, anti-authoritarian streak. Which, I mean, that makes sense. It's true with most of the doctors, but with him in particular, it just feels very real. And
Yeah,
it's
it
worked
does. It
into
does.
his
Yeah.
characterization a lot. Um, And even though, like, he's not explicit about his pacifism, he doesn't really have to be because it just kind of comes through with his actions and his words. It's just kind of great.
Yeah, it's that element of the character which I love, which is his first
Mm.
impulse is always to try and get out of a situation peacefully, but he's not beyond jumping to violence if
Yeah,
that alternative
yeah.
is eroded
But
in a way.
he always sort of measures it out properly. Like, there's a bit where he sort of gets sort of these two guards Venusian Aikido technique to just, I don't know, make them unconscious or something. So
Yeah, like a
yeah,
nerve pinch kind of thing.
yeah. Same with Gebek when they're fighting. He clearly doesn't want to do this, and it's kind of Gebek's um sort of desire that kind of destroys him in the end. And incidentally,
You mean do you mean
I thought
Edis?
Edis, excuse me, yes.
Yeah.
Um his characterization was pretty good too. I think I remembered something you told me about. I can't remember what episode it was we were talking about, but I think something you mentioned that you like in characterization is when they have a clear sense of like a sense of duty, for example, and it on some level definitely feels justifiable, but it gets taken kind of too far, and it winds up being their downfall in a very kind of, I mean, this is how I interpret it, but in sort of an Oedipus Rex kind of a way. But um, he kind of embodies that, I think. Like it's understandable that he feels the way he does because of the horrible way the miners are treated. But seeing him tragically give in to his own ambitions, um, yeah, there is a tragedy there. I think
Well,
it's
it's also
pretty
the element.
potent.
It's also the element of a willingness to ignore the truth if it doesn't suit your personal belief system.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's
How he in every single time when confronted with what's actually going on, he always responds with, "This must be a trick, or they're obviously
yeah.
lying
Oh,
because it's getting in the way of what he
mm,
personally wants." In that that, and it's another like cautionary tale, I think, because as worker friendly as this episode is, it also is like a warning of like you know don't yes we need to turn the system around, but don't be violent and don't kill to get there.
mm,
It's that's not going to work out for anyone. You're just going
mm,
to become the villain in the eyes of everyone.
mm. Um,
And it's pretty clear
mm,
as well that at a certain point Edis is only doing this to like for power reasons as well. Like if he was really
yeah,
looking out for his fellow workers, he wouldn't have stabbed one of them. He's
yeah.
clearly looking out for himself, and he's
Mm.
exploiting like Agador in a different way than the
Or
others
at the
are
very
to
least,
do it.
he's making a kind of, "Oh, you're dying for the greater good" sort of argument, which is kind of, ethically disturbing,
Yes.
in its own way. But there's a bit where I can't find the name of the character, but, what the guy he kills. where he's
Yes.
trying to explain the plan that they've cooked up, and
Mhm.
Eddis is clearly just not listening. And it's like, and he comes so close to properly explaining it, but Eddis is so consumed with his own
Yeah.
desires at that point that he's just blind and deaf to
Yeah. And
any kind of.
I'll also add we were talking earlier about the recent political state. Ignoring the truth to suit a personal agenda. Well, that's hasn't happened in the last 8 years of politics at all.
Yeah, that's fake news, Cuff. What are you talking about?
Yeah, of course it is. What am I saying?
Oh dear. Uh, yeah. So surprisingly prescient. So that's pretty neat.
Mm,
Also gotta love Sarah's line. There's nothing, Your Highness. There's nothing only about being a girl, which is just
yeah,
yeah.
it's quite a succinct takedown of that philosophy.
Mm. And also, this is something I sort of noticed, on especially on a rewatch. Um, and I don't think they would have thought about it this deeply, but when the Doctor sort of encourages Sarah to talk to um Thiliora about women's lib, it's kind of the way I read that scene. It's kind of a good example of the Doctor sort of using, sort of in a way, his privilege to help elevate the voices of people and ideas that are important and truly progressive and necessary, which is
Yeah.
kind of great. And frankly, a lot better than a lot of the ethics we got in the Tyndall era. Just gonna
Mm-hmm.
say it right now.
Mm.
In a sense, this is what Chapel Roan would probably say as a feminine phenomenon. So
Uh,
yeah, it's Chapel Roan reference in Two Who's. Who would have thunk it? Anyway.
it's egregious reference aside. My main thought was it's Chappelle. Yeah, I want to do my Sunday church. Yeah, just go to Chapel Rowan down the street. You can't miss it. It's
Well, go listen to our music, Cuff. Get some learn from the Book of Femininomenon. Go to the Pink Pony Club. Anyway, moving right along. Um, there's other stuff I wanted to talk about. I just can't remember
yeah.
specifically. Um,
I like I like seeing Alpha Centauri again.
yeah, yeah, he's
Just
always
seeing
good
them
fun.
pop up again.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, I like you. You're quite a good character, and it's good to
yeah,
see they haven't changed that much in the last 50 years. Like they're still
yeah.
kind natured, but a bit of a coward.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's a bit of a coward, and there's this one moment when they're like, when they basically do reveal, I think, where the Doctor is, and I'm like, oh no, come on, Alpha Centauri, that was your moment to
That was
really
your moment.
shine. But it doesn't matter too much because the Queen lies instead, and so the scene still
Yeah,
works basically.
it does.
But yeah, they're good fun. Seeing them show up again. Just a
And it
very
was good to
pleasant
see.
character.
It was also good to see Sarah Jane warm to them.
Yeah.
They had
Um.
that there's a great real humanizing moment for Alpha Centauri where they're like,
Yeah.
humans are often afraid of me when they see me.
Yeah. And I
And
think Sarah even apologizes at that
she
point, so
does,
it's
yeah.
kind of
But
great.
it's great that Alpha Centauri doesn't deliver that in in a guilt tripping way or in an aggressive way.
Yeah, just in a
It's
oh
not great. It's not great for their character that it's in a poor self esteem way,
yeah,
but it's
but there's still that
also good.
connection, right?
Yeah, and it's great that they haven't developed a bitterness for it or over
Yeah,
it. Like they know that not everyone looks like them.
yeah. Um, yeah, it's just it's kind of that sort of that dedication to this idea of sort of interplanetary cooperation, which you know, it just becomes very compelling, I think. Um, uh, the Queen Thalera is quite good.
I was waiting for her to become like a more pivotal character in the story, kind of like how King
mm,
Peladon was in the previous one. And it's
yeah,
a shame. It was a shame given the feminist messaging early on that all she really
yeah,
does is sort of sit around and then get
yeah,
captured by the enemy at the end of
yeah.
the story, which
There's some moments where she's taking a decisive role, whether she's sort of
she stands up for the
wielding
right
her
people.
power for the greater
Yeah,
good, or when she's pretending to faint to help the others escape. That's kind of good. But yes, I think you're right. I was watching the episode today, and it got to the bit near the end where they're all sort of fighting, and she's literally just standing there, and it makes sense in
yeah,
a way, but that just kind of shows the missed opportunity, I guess.
yeah. It would have been great for that to have been a moment for her to like stand up and like claim
Yeah,
authority.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, if she
instead
did
of like
that, would it if she did that would have it inevitably led to a sacrifice play, and that might have ruined the ending a bit. I don't know,
I
but
don't know if it would have. I think there's a way you can do it without the sacrifice play.
mm,
Like you can still have her get captured by Eckersley.
oh
We've got
yeah,
a moment
yeah,
before
sure,
where she's able to like maybe she's the one towards the end that sort of rallies everyone together and like fully like adopts the um
yeah,
or gains the respect of everyone like in one fell
yeah,
swoop. I would have say.
like uniting the workers and the
Yeah,
nobility, and
like
yeah, it's a
aside
shame because that could have been good.
yeah, and aside from that one moment where she stands up to the Chancellor for like for stepping all over her, basically,
Mm,
we don't really ever see her putting into effect what Sarah Jane has, and to a lesser extent, the Doctor has taught her.
mm.
And it's a shame that she is more passive than maybe she should be throughout the story,
I mean,
especially
mm,
because I think, in my opinion, King Peladon and his arc was one of the stronger elements of the Curse of Peladon. To
yeah,
see the monarchy like really like through all moments that they're on screen they're really fighting to progress their society forward and like actively as well, and
yeah,
here the queen is certainly like she's paying lip service to that, but we
mm,
rarely see her actually taking like
yeah.
active steps to doing it.
I mean, she does a little bit in the end when she sort of
She does a little bit in the
reclaims.
end. The ending is her strongest moment when she
Yeah,
you know, she supersedes tradition and titles and
yeah.
elevates a commoner to the status of chancellor.
Yeah,
That's a
and the
really
bit
good
where
moment.
Sarah sort of encourages her by saying, all these great things you've done, you did them yourselves. You didn't need anybody else. That is quite great and effective. But yeah, could there have been another more decisive moment earlier? Because that's
Yeah,
just kind of, I don't know. It's kind of confirming what she and we as an audience should already know.
yeah,
Um, yeah, like it's. I'm glad the feminist message is there, and it's worked in. Certainly a lot more cohesively than it could be. Um, there's
yeah,
even little bits like when Alpha Centauri says, "Many things have changed on Peladon, Your Majesty. Perhaps this too should change." So
yeah.
it's it's really it's compelling for what it is, and it's great that it's worked in as well as it is. But
Well,
I
I'll
think
also put it
almost
this
by any
way.
modern lens, they could take it further. Surely.
Well, not even by not just by a modern lens, because two stories from now in Doctor Who is Robot, which we've both seen. Is one of the few ones we have
Oh
seen,
yeah.
and that the feminist message in that one is more pronounced and from memory a lot stronger than it is.
Do you think so?
Well,
I mean,
it's just more.
I know it's there for sure.
It's 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 more present there. It's more critical to a lot of characters' motivations throughout the story.
Mm, yeah. I mean,
I haven't rewatched it in years, so
yeah.
I might be coming from a place of misremembering.
No,
But like,
I think I see what you mean though, because like
yeah,
and maybe it's just because Robot is a shorter story and kind of a smaller scale story, whereas here we've got a very big cast that we're having to deal with. So um, sort of whatever themes that underpin the characters in Robot, they can afford to be more focused because there's fewer of them. But yeah, I think I can kind of see what you mean there. But
mm,
I don't know, maybe we'll have to take a look at Robot again at some point
sure.
to be sure. But yeah. Is there much else to say?
I hope so. We haven't been talking for that long.
Yeah.
I like Gebek as a character.
Yeah, he's quite good.
He's a really good presence throughout a lot of the story as like sort of a mediator between the two sides.
Played by the ever-compelling Rex Robinson, who we saw in our last... Oh, no, not last. In The Hand of Fear and in The Three Doctors. Which is
Mm.
kind of great. But yes, he's a very good character. Because he's got that struggle between sort of listening to the Doctor, but also listening to the, needs of his people, and you really, I think, feel that struggle.
Yeah, certainly.
Despite the fact that you can kind of see that he's going to be, that mediator, and he's going to, come around to the Doctor side in the end. That struggle is still there, and it feels quite real. I don't know whether that's more due to the writing or the performances, but either way, quite good. It should be said. There's one bit with a dialogue that I really, really like, and it's when Gebek is telling the miners to basically pretend to get back to work, and he's like,
Yeah,
oh, like, oh God,
it's such a
what have
clever
I
way of
written?
communicating a secret
Yeah,
message.
it's showing rather than telling,
Yeah,
and
it's like just like we have always followed the Chancellor. You know our friend the
it's,
Chancellor.
it's like, yeah, he says, you remember how we cooperated with the Federation Armory? It's like, it's clever, it's funny, it's again, it's got that nuance, and again, it shows without telling, which again, not I mean, throughout Doctor Who generally, that's a lot better than a lot of other
Yeah.
scenarios in Doctor Who, regardless of
Hell,
era.
I mean, I'll say this: like, there are one or two genuinely quite great humorous moments and scenes in this story.
Oh yeah,
Um, the sequence where the Doctor's asking for a glass of water, especially, is
yeah,
genuinely quite funny.
yeah. Where it's like, oh well, nice to try, I suppose.
But
Yeah,
then it's the follow up where it's like, well, I actually do want some water, and then the guard
mm,
like really
pours it back
pettily
into
like
the
pours it back into the jug. It's
yeah.
really quite funny.
And then when he does a little magic trick, which also obviously works well into the plot, it just feels
Yeah,
and it's kind of great because it's one of those things where that all those things, those flourishes, feel like a very John Pertwee thing to
they do.
do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
even if it's a question of the writers writing for the performance, it's great to see um, them catering to that unique performance because it's possible that other doctors would have done stuff like that, but I can't imagine them being done in quite the same way that John Pertwee does them, which is just really quite delightful.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Do you want to expand on Agador a little bit, or
I was genuinely upset when he died.
yeah, that was. It's kind of great to see him sort of take out Eckersley. There's something I know very satisfying about that. I'm not sure
Yeah,
why,
like
but
you. Well, I think it's the thing. Like you were bastardizing my name and killing in my name. Well,
yeah,
you don't get to do that. I take my name back.
yeah, um, for sure.
And like
Um, and
when
just
he
watching,
got shot by Eckersley, I genuinely like sat up in my seat. I was like, no, no, Agador. I
yeah,
don't know, like just it really got to me for some reason. Maybe
yeah,
it's just like maybe how endeared the Doctor is to him,
yeah,
and how like especially like from earlier in the story when after getting out of the pit, the Doctor was like, oh, it was good to see Agatha again. It was good to get reacquainted.
mm,
And then he goes out like that, like a goddamn hero. It was genuinely really sad.
yeah. The true protector of Peladon. Well, and the
Yeah.
interesting thing is, it kind of fits in with the other characters because
Mm,
there's layers there, right? Because on
yeah.
one level he's, this scary monster, but then the Doctor sees, a softer side to him, which is a very Doctor thing to do. It's great. Um, but then he's got that kind of heroism, but he's also still got the ferocity. So there's a lot of layers there,
But
which
there's also the layer of like fulfilling and like realizing the Peladonians' beliefs in Agador, how
yeah,
Agador will fight for Peladon. And like
yeah,
literally
in a
he
way
sees
more
the Queen
realistic way
like
than we've seen so far.
yeah, like he sees the Queen like being threatened and the Queen strike attacks, and then
Mm,
Agador goes, oh, that's my cue for
yeah,
Peladon. Rawr!
yeah. No more magical trickery. This is the real deal.
Yeah, it's like really,
Agador
it's
in the fur.
it's actually a really genuinely satisfying end to this 10 episode story where like
6.
I'm including the Curse of Peladon in
Oh,
this.
pardon me.
How across all 10 episodes, like the myth of Agador is like in a way like it's bastardized by people
Hmm.
trying to exploit it to control the people. Um, it's done so by um,
Yeah, and that's not prescient at all.
um, it's done so by the characters in the first story who invoke Peladon as a way to scare off the
Hmm.
the Federation. It's
Yep.
done so by Ortron in this when
Hmm.
he's attempting to use it in for kind of similar ways, and it's also
Hmm.
used by Etis as a way of um, convincing the miners that they need to lean towards violent
Hmm.
means
Uprising and yeah.
by claiming that Agador is looking down upon everything.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and then right at the end of the story, we do see Agador like properly attack, and we
Hmm.
see him do so to fulfill the beliefs of the people.
Yeah.
Like it's
Fulfill
defending the planet, it's
his
defending the
destiny in a
queen.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a 10 episode build up to this one moment,
Yeah.
and
And
seeing it happen was genuinely really quite satisfying.
what's quite remarkable about that is given how much emphasis is placed on Agador, especially given that this story is called The Monster of Peladon, that story arc of his works really well, despite the fact that he's not in either story that much.
No, not really at all. Yeah.
So the fact that they were able to do so much with so little, I mean, fantastic. Good for, oh, was it Brian Hales? Is that the name of the
Yeah,
writer?
yeah. Brian
Yeah.
Hales, his last
Yep.
story credit for Doctor Who.
Oh, wow. I wonder, did he do The Curse of Peladon? I should probably,
I'll look at it.
yeah.
Uh, well, he directed Carnival of Monsters, so already I love him. He also directed Planet of the Spiders. Uh, what did he write? He produced Robot. He wrote. I can't really see. He oversaw the Three Doctors.
Right,
Hmm. I can't see on his Wikipedia here which stories he wrote.
right. It
Um,
is, hang on. It says, I've got some here on the TARDIS wiki. It
yeah.
says, the Celestial Toymaker, the Smugglers, the Ice Warriors, the Seeds of Death, which makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the Curse of Peladon and the Monster of Peladon.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Also great seeing the Ice Warriors in color, which this would have been the second and last time in the classic series we would see that.
Yeah, we don't get to see the Ice Warriors again until 2013.
Nice. Hmm. And they used a pretty good effect here, should be said.
Yeah, I mean, like when we see them at the end of episode 3, it's almost um, like the circle completes itself, and we get
Yeah.
that last remaining element from Curse of Peladon coming into the story, but this time in a very different way.
Yeah.
It's sort of a almost like a fulfillment of the bait and switch from Curse, where for a while the
Hmm.
Ice Warriors were being built up as the main bad guys, but it turns
Hmm.
out they're not. And then in this story, it's for a moment at least, it's like, oh, the Ice Warriors have come from
The
the Federation to
Federation.
sort things out, but it turns out that these are Federation's like defectors, and
Yeah.
here are the main instigators of
Yeah. These
all this
crazy.
trouble. It's another nice flip from the
Yeah.
previous story's flip, which
Yeah.
works pretty well here.
Yeah.
Although I did notice that I'm not sure the same across the other classic Who Ice Warrior stories, but some of them, like when they're walking around in costumes, they have big um I guess like I think I can't remember if they're hip or knee bulges in their like armor, like big like orbs of armor on their hips or knees. But it
Yeah, like
reminded
big
me a lot. Is it on their hips or knees?
hips, I think.
Hips, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it reminded me a lot of the silhouette of the chickens from Chicken Run for some reason.
Yeah. No, I
I
guess I can see what you
once I
mean.
noticed that, I couldn't
Yeah.
really take it seriously when they were like
Yeah.
patrolling and marching around.
I think they were using old Ice Warrior costumes because there's this one that has a bigger head than the others and a smaller body in
Yeah.
ratio, and I'm pretty sure I've seen a black and white photo from the Ice Warriors story of that specific Ice Warrior costume, so that's interesting. But yeah, it was they were pretty compelling. I mean, would you say that twist is one of the stronger elements, certainly of the second half?
I think that I don't know if it's the strongest element of the second half, but it's a strong element of the story overall, and
Mm,
it sets up a lot of the stronger elements of the second half in a good way.
sure, yeah. Mm. Um, Anything else to say?
I think I've summed it all up as effectively as I'm gonna.
Yeah, same. Um, I found it thoroughly enjoyable. Maybe yeah, that back half is doing the heavy lifting, but for me, it justifies most of what's going on in the story. Yeah, it was just a very enjoyable story for me.
And what would you rank it?
I think I think I'm going to give it an 8, with the small caveat that there are some elements in this story, again, mostly in the back half, that I found more compelling than a lot of what was in um, Curse of Peladon.
Cool. I'm also gonna give
Imperfect
it
though
an
it is.
8.
Sure.
I'm ranking it slightly below Curse of Peladon for the reasons I've discussed.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, for me, it's the somewhat repetitive nature of the first half, along with the
Hmm.
fact that the Queen, uh, her usage in the story was a bit disappointing for me.
Sure.
But that's pretty much it. Like otherwise, it's just as strong. It's just as effective. It's just as thematically rich, and it's just as entertaining.
Yep.
Right. Well, next time on the podcast, you know it, you love it.
Hmm.
We're looking at Blink.
Yep. And we're pretty excited for it.
Yeah, it's been a long
Um,
time coming.
yeah. So
Until then, I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and long live the Federation. May its spies remain few.
Sure.
I would like to see the Federation come back in a new Who episode. Actually, it'd be interesting to explore them from a modern
Feel
day
like that
standpoint.
must have happened. There's some reference to the Galactic
There's a reference
Federation.
to it in Empress of Mars, but that's only because it's like
Yeah.
welcoming Mars into the Federation. We don't see the
Right.
Federation properly.
Okay. Maybe I'm confusing it for something else. Yeah, I'm confusing it with something else, I think. Anyway, yeah, it would be fun to see it again.
Yeah. And that was the outro. It was long, but it was there.
Yeah.